right, welcome out. Here we are. Another list in our series of lists in regards to college and all things inclusive. By the time we're done, we'll have dozens of lists, reference points for anybody who's in college or going off to college or thinking of returning to college. So here we're looking at the stellar essay. We're looking at how do you produce a great essay. Some students talk about the fact that professors grade essays so subjectively, right? They think that there's quite a difference between one professor and the next. There's how they grade, the criteria for how they grade, and so forth. And there is certainly some subjectivity, but at the same time, there's basic rules that you have to follow, and this is what I'm giving you here, okay? I'll give an example of, for instance, I used to work at one college, and we would get together as a group. Excuse me. Um, the most, if not all of the English professors who were teaching in any particular semester would all get together in a room. I remember it was a trailer, it was a temporary facility, at least at that time. And we would grade a paper. We would all grade a paper and put it back into a pile, put it into a pile, done pile, right? And then those papers would get a second look by another professor, right? If they were in considerable agreement, they would just leave it as is. If they felt that the paper was graded too high or too low, they would put their mark on there, and then there would be an averaging out of that grade, okay? And I can tell you, 70% of the time, if not more, 75% of the time, teachers agreed on what the initial analysis of that paper was. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. Number one, work from the outside in. This is something that I tell my students, whenever you're dealing with something of relative complexity or relative size, good size, and an essay is usually a good size project because you're talking, at least 3 to 5 pages, 5 to 7, 7 to 10, maybe 20 pages, 40 pages or more. So it's a good size project. And I've written essays. Well, in grad school, you're writing really long papers. I've written books. I've written about 9 books, hundreds of pages long. So I can tell you from experience that getting it all to work together, even on a short paper, 3 to 5, 5 to 7, is a challenge. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of interrelated parts. So that's why the best thing to do is to look at the bigger picture, step back. You can't see the forest for the trees. You probably heard that expression, right? That means you're amongst all these trees and you go, oh, these are trees, but where am I? What is this? May be a forest, but how big is it? You might think it's a relatively small forest, but then when you drive a couple miles away or launch up into the sky and fly above the trees, you'll see that it's a massive forest, right? Can't see the forest for the trees, or maybe it's a forest, but you can't even guess the size because you're too close, right? So that's one of the difficulties in trying to understand something of relative complexity. If you don't get the overall picture, it's difficult to understand the details or the minutia, or the micro. You got to get the macro. And I took macro and microeconomics in college, my first shot at college. And I remember I took the courses. I did decently. Maybe I got a B in both classes. But it really didn't click for me until many years later when I realized how important economics is. And I read a book called Common Sense Economics, which is on a national trend, getting around the country, helping even high school kids understand basics in economics. Everybody needs to know money. What is money? What are its origins? Where does it come from? Why is certain value given to money? Why does the value of the dollar go up and down? What is money supply? What does the Fed do? What does the Federal Reserve? What does the Treasury do? What is this thing, money? How does it all work, right? And most people don't know. It's not something that is, I know I'm a little bit off on a slant, an angle here, but bear with me. It's important. Remember that. I'll say it 3 times. It's important. It's important. So, understanding the basics of economics, we live and breathe, free markets basically in the United States, right? We live and breathe in a political environment at the community level, the state level, the federal level, the international level, right? So there are some things, and if you're interested in learning more about economics and the political, then go to my other lists, my other collection of videos for those categories, and you'll get some very useful insights for your personal benefit as well as public and private. So I would have my students learn about basic economics, common sense economics, and not getting not getting into a lot of the minutiae or details, but just kind of getting an overview of what economics is, right? So that you, as an active participating citizen that swims within the very water of an economic system, you can't avoid it, right? I mean, we see what happens, um, when too much money is spent, the money supply goes up, and inflation occurs, or bringing inflation down. How does that happen? You want to make sure that you can vote people into office who know what these things are, right? That would be very helpful. There's something else you might want to look into. What does an executive who's going to be running this country, what does he or she need to know, right? What are the qualifications for a president of the United States? Most people don't even know. What is the president's job? Some say that the job is not about economics. It's not a business. Well, it is a business because one of the main responsibilities of Congress, they control the purse strings. They try to generate revenue and money and income and keep people employed, and they have something to do with the dollar and its value and the borrowing of money and spending of money. So it's very much a business, very much so. So understanding basic economic principles should be a requirement for everyone who goes into politics. I say it's for every citizen, because do you not make money? Who doesn't make money unless you're, inherently wealthy? You got rich parents, you just fall into some money and the lotto, hit the lotto or something, right? But you've got to understand money. You've got to understand how to make it, how to manage it. What is inflation? How is your money going to be invested? Are you going to have enough for the here and now and into the future when you retire? A lot of people are retiring without enough money. It happens, right? Anyways, really got off on a tangent, but a very important tangent. So anyways, work from the outside in. First, you must know the major components of an essay or the 5 elements: title, intro, thesis, body, and conclusion. Whenever one approaches considerably large task, as I've said, one is best to begin with the bigger picture, then work your way in. So as you work your way in, what do you get after the 5 elements of an essay? You have the elements, those 5 elements of the essay, the overview, the bigger picture. Then you get into the paragraphs, smaller sentences, smaller still phrases, and smallest of all, words. You could go letters, but we really don't worry too much about letters at this point. We're not in elementary school. Okay. I hope you know your letters. Number 2, understand the difference between paragraphs. Introductions and conclusions differ from body paragraphs in one major way. Body paragraphs are developmental, meaning that the thesis is being developed via examples, data, facts, expert, even non-expert testimonies, and so forth and so on. And you can put diagrams in there and pictures and stories and anecdotes and whatever else. See your latest English text, compositional English text on what some of those developmental forms or types of things or elements that you can use to develop. Develop means I have a very vague statement here in my thesis. Television viewing has an adverse effect on the viewer as regards viewers' age, viewing time, and viewing content. What does that mean? Really, what is your argument? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to prove? What are you trying to suggest? How are you trying to enlighten us? What are you doing? What are you doing? Right? Remember, that's one aspect or one element of writing an essay. What are you doing? What's your purpose? What's your intent? Anyways, generally speaking, academic paragraphs are coherent and unified, with the body paragraphs being developmental. Coherent means transitions. If they don't cohere or coalesce, one section into the other, paragraph into the other, sentence into the other, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, over a period of time, especially if the paper has a lot of coherency issues. It's going to be difficult, if not impossible, for the reader, never mind the professor, who's handing out your paycheck, which is a grade, right? I talk to my students, you're not making money in college. You're actually spending money for the what you're getting there. But at the same time, in the long run, the end product of that education should be you've acquired enough skills, knowledge, and attitudes to make more money than you're making now, right? Earn a decent wage. Not with the body paragraphs being developmental, non-academic paragraphs are basically one idea unified and are anywhere from a single sentence, even phrase, up to a dozen or more sentences. In fiction, you can use one word or one sentence, right? You've read fiction. Hey, Bob, where are you going? Next line, indent, nowhere. Next line, indent. So that one word, nowhere, is considered a paragraph, right? Why? Next line, indent, because. Next line, indent, why? Next line, indent, because. And also in advertising, less filling, tastes great. Those are not complete sentences. Those are fragments, right? Those are phrases. That comes from an old beer commercial. Bud Light or something, whatever it was. I can't even remember. And they had the two groups, less filling, tastes great. Ask your parents. Anyways, there it is. Next are the foundational sentences. Some good things to know. Yes, the foundational element of communication is the sentence. It can be a word or a phrase like no, stop, run, but there's not a lot of detailed or involved communication going on, especially in an academic setting or realm with just one word or statements or fragments or phrases, right? The major source of communication is a sentence. I am tired and it's getting late. That's actually a compound sentence because there's a comma in there. There's two sentences, two subject verb objects. You don't know what a sentence is. You got to know these things. You got to have these labels readily available at your fingertips or at the tip of your brain cells, right? Einstein said, commit to memory those things that you're going to be using, that fundamental knowledge that you're going to be using on a regular basis. If it's more arcane or esoteric, right? If it's not as essential and it's not used as frequently, then leave it in the book, he said. That's good advice. I give that advice to my students all the time. I use a lot of Einstein, but rarely do I refer to his quotes when in talking about science. A lot of his most insightful stuff that I remember is just common sense, everyday applications to how to think and act and functionality of a good human brain, right? Analytical, critical, rational thinking, hopefully, right? Hopefully those elements. Human brain. You don't see a lot of that going on these days. allegedly, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And if you've seen that movie, Idiocracy, I've watched it several times, cracks me up. Very, very funny movie. Now I forgot who's in it now, but it's been out for a while. Now people are saying it used to be a movie, now it's a documentary, because of the general dumbing down state of America. Our educational system is running into all kinds of problems, more money spent per student than any other country, but 40th out of 40 countries that have been had their academic environs studied. And as stated above, they must be coherent, flowing logically one into another with connecting transitional words and phrases. Finally, the words must be looked at for proper diction, like diction, dictionary, words, word choice. The crowd rushed the stage. Well, they're rushing the stage. What kind of crowd? Is it violent? The mob, right? You could even say maybe violent mob, but that's usually redundant. The violent mob rushed the stage, right? So you want to be correct with your diction. Form, you're talking about structure of the sentence, subject, verb, object. You have a verb there. Do you write of? I should of, and I see this a lot online. I should have gone to the store. It's I should have. I know we get lazy and we truncate or go with pronunciations or the movement of our mouth that's easiest. I shoulda. That's why we say shoulda, right? You just got to go right? You don't have to go of, open, close. You just go That's lazy. I shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? Anyways, I digress. Finally, the words must be looked at for proper diction, form, definition, and so forth, right? All that minutia that we won't get into here. What is being asked? Make sure you understand the question being posed to you. Be careful, students lose points here all too often because they didn't understand the question being posed, or maybe they did, but at some point got off track, which can quickly drop your grade, right? Stick to the task at hand. You might even have some relevant, brilliant insight that's related to what you're talking about, but it's related, it's not directly, it's not answering the question directly or answering what the question is asking, right? 5, professors just care about filling pages. I get that a lot. Why do I have to write 3 to 5 pages? I can write this in 2. Can you write it in 1? Yeah. They complain for that 5 to 7 paper. They can easily cover the topic in 3 pages. As I said, they'll chop it down. So that's not the point. Each writing class requires the student to generate a certain number of words. I forgot what it is. Is it 30,000 a semester? It depends on the course, the class, the level. 40, 50,000 words a semester. I don't remember. But why words? What's the fascination with words, word totals? It's about practice. The more you write, the more you practice getting it right. So that's why you are required to write pages of certain length. And all the time you're practicing to fulfill all the requirements of what an essay should be, right? And developing your thesis properly, accurately, thoroughly, specifically is all a part of the task at hand, right? Thesis is the backbone of the paper. You've probably heard that phrase mentioned in high school. It is the thesis that is the main point. It usually appears as the last sentence in the introduction. Building up to that thesis, utilizing controversial, what does it do? What does the introduction do? Again, I'm just kind of giving you some brief insights or overviews into some of the components of the essay, the intro, body, paragraphs, conclusion. And if you want more information, check out your local English composition text or writing text. Utilizing controversial quotes, interesting stats or anecdotes, and so on. It also should consist of the verb and object. And here's an example. The cost of education has risen 50% in the last 10 years, right? What are we talking about? Cost of education, right? That's the subject. What about it? And the what about it is usually in the verb, right? Is 50%, has risen 50%, will be 50%, should have been 50%, right? Whatever, all right? So that verb kind of orients specificity as to the when, the why, and the how much, right? So that is a decent thesis. It's totally taken out of context. I don't have anything to put it into, an intro or a paper, but looks good. The cost of education, and you got to be specific, but not overly specific, but specific enough so that the reader understands what you're talking about. And don't get overly specific with just one sentence because that's taken care of in the developmental section, the middle paragraphs, where you develop or expand or explain, expand out, or explain in more detail through examples, through research, through data, expert testimonies, and blah, blah, blah. Right. Finally, it is essential that the entire paper stick to that thesis and that it's developed in the middle section or developmental section. Fastest way to lose points. So if you're interested in losing points, pay attention. Not that most students are looking to do so intentionally, but lacking an understanding of these three main issues, upcoming issues, will lead to rapidly declining point totals. Problems with thesis, sentences, and transitions. We know about the thesis that it needs to have its verb and subject and verb, as well as keywords and phrases that should be referred to throughout the essay. That's another point, right? So in that example above, the cost of education has risen by 50% in the last 10 years. So the key phrases there is education, cost rising 50%, and the time span, 10 years, right? So over the last 10 years, the 50% increase in cost of education is mostly related to, right? So you're going to be using keywords and phrases in the sentence, and that's a good way, as a regular reminder of how to stay on task, right? Remember that in elementary school? Stay on task. As well as keywords and phrases that should be referred to throughout the essay, and that everything must be written with the thesis in mind. What many students don't realize is that poor sentences not making sense, can limit meaning quickly, for the sentence is the basic element of communication. Like if I started talking to you in fragments or dependent clauses, since I was 5 years old, if I really have the time, other than what I'm looking at here, right? What? Although I'm running late, if there's more time, when I get to the building, even if I really don't care, right? So those are not sentences. They're not standalone subject, verb, object elements, right? So that's how we communicate. And if you don't write incomplete sentences, and there certainly is a time and a place for fragments and phrases and even single words in your writing, but don't do it in college. Don't do it on college papers. Sorry, because we're practicing here. We're practicing complete sentences. Once you become a master of complete sentences and well-written paragraphs, academic and non-academic, then you can go off and experiment a little. What many students don't realize is that poor sentence sense can limit meaning quickly, for the sentence as a basic element. Finally, without proper transitions, we talked about this before, but it bears repeating. You notice I keep repeating fundamental elements of writing, right? Keep repeating the 5 elements of the essay. I keep repeating about paragraphs. I keep repeating about sentences. I keep repeating about the thesis, right? Without proper transitions or road signs to the reader from one idea to the next, the message will quickly be lost. Don't be vague. Yes, in so many ways, don't be vague. Being specific not only works well in the classroom, but the workplace. I've never heard of a job requirement that requires the potential candidate, potential employee to be vague in any way, shape, or form, even in the written form, spoken form, or hand signals, whatever. If you can't communicate well, that can result in not only a loss of income for your employer, but eventually loss of a job for you. So practice being specific. And this is something, specificity and being specific and really understanding the lay of the land and not jumping the gun, not be, you have to be cautious. You have to be a little, when thinking about things, especially for the first time. And if you go on the internet, it's full. The internet is rife with people just saying things without thinking. It is a international disease. I was going to say national, but it is. That's why the internet to me is just almost, except for some instances, occasions, and things, almost a complete waste of time. And if you ever argue with anybody on the internet, why? Are you trying to convert that person? Are you trying to do your best for your family and your country by converting that person to what? I don't know, to a particular opinion that is just subjective, right? That can't be proven. And even if it can be proven, people will just ignore it. You can come up with great research, confirmed and validated research till the end of time, from the greatest minds on earth. And if that person on the internet doesn't agree with you, oh, that's all lies. Made it up. Prove it. Right. So you're people, changing people's minds, especially on the internet, never happen. I don't want to say never. Very, very rarely. So don't engage. Don't waste your time. Do something more productive. Maybe with all that time that you're wasting arguing on the internet, you can do some extra sit-ups, spend some extra time at the gym, maybe help that little old lady across the street, pick up a book and learn something. I don't know. There's tons of ways that are more productive to spend your time than on the internet arguing. Good Lord, just don't do it. A couple of my favorite things to do on the internet is block, delete. Yes, sir, ma'am. For example, instead of saying the car was out of control and almost hit some people, say the bright red Ford Mustang careened out of control, nearly going up on two tires and taking out a dozen or more people on the sidewalk. Right? More vivid, more specificity. We can see the car. We see the shape. We see the model. We see that it's out of control. We see that it's on two tires. We see who's around. We see about a dozen people or more, at least, on the sidewalk. Much more specific than instead of saying the car was out of control and almost hit some people, right? But it's amazing to me, politicians, business people in the public arena, people who speak in front of hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people, terrible at communicating. So it's not a common, like common sense is not common. Good communication is also not common. So practice that. Get off the internet, stop arguing, and practice some good communication. 9, yes, 5 to 6 pages, but avoid filler. Some students focus more on filling the word requirements than focusing on the communication at hand. If you do it right, you will be very specific in your descriptions and explanations, which quickly adds to the length and coherence of the paper. So you can see there, when I wasn't very specific, right? I've got the car was out of control and almost hit some people, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 words. But when I got specific, what did I double the words? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I more than doubled the words, right? So if you've only got 2 pages or 2.5 pages, maybe you're not being specific enough. And add some more examples, add some more data, add some more research. Nothing says you can't do that, right? Here's an example, and to clarify even more, to hopefully help you to see the picture more clearly. Here's another example, and here's a third one. 3 is a nice number, right? Learn how to write. That would be good. Guess what? Most employers are looking for good communication skills. If it's not in the written form, then it's in the audio form or visual form. Audio in the visual videos, right? One composition class I used a text in which the author's name was Ching-Ning Chu. This is to make sure everything's in place. To my dismay, many students thought the author was male. It only takes a few minutes to cross-check that if we're not sure about it, right? Don't get lazy. Again, this will pay off on the job as well. Unfortunately, many people are more about finishing or sounding smart than being smart. You can see this all the time on the internet. There we are again, where the commenters, time and again, don't read what's there or quickly scan before writing. Such shortcuts are not only bad in college, but the workplace as well. So that's it. Until our next list, we'll see you later. Take care.